I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the moving truck in our driveway. After 15 years of marriage, I'd learned to read the signs of Daniel's business decisions. And this had all the hallmarks of another one of his schemes. Surprise! He grinned as I walked into our house, what was left of it. The furniture was gone, the walls bare except for nail holes where our family photos had hung. I sold the house. I set my grocery bags down slowly, careful not to let my hands shake. You did what? Sold it. Got an amazing offer. $3 million cash. He was practically bouncing with excitement, like a child who'd pulled off a clever prank. No realtor fees, no haggling. Guy wanted it as is, furniture included. We closed this morning. I looked around our dream house, the one we'd spent 5 years renovating, the one where we'd raised our children, the one that was supposed to be our forever home. When were you planning to tell me? I'm telling you now. He spread his arms wide. Isn't it great? $3 million, Sarah. We can buy something even better. The house wasn't for sale, Daniel. His smile faltered slightly. Well, technically it was. Remember when we refinanced last year? You signed the papers making me sole owner. I remembered. He'd said it was just easier for his business dealings, that it would help with taxes. I'd trusted him. Just like I'd trusted him with so many other things over the years. Where are the kids supposed to sleep tonight? I asked quietly. Oh, I got us a suite at the Marriott. Just for a few days until we find a new place. He pulled out his phone. Look, I already have some listings saved. The children are at my sister's house. I cut him off. Remember? It's their weekly sleepover with their cousins. Right. He waved dismissively. Perfect timing then. We can get everything moved out before they get back. They'll be excited about staying in a hotel. I watched him ramble on about his plans, about the amazing opportunity, about how this was going to change everything for us. He didn't notice my silence, my stillness. He never did. The money's already in my business account, he continued. I'm thinking we could. Your business account? Something cold settled in my stomach. Not our joint account? Well, yeah. I handled the sale, so it made sense. He trailed off, finally noticing my expression. Come on, Sarah. Don't make this into a thing. You know I always take care of us. Like he'd taken care of us when he invested our savings in his friend's crypto scheme? Or when he used our emergency fund to buy into that timeshare scam? Or when he... I need some air, I said, turning toward the door. Wait, where are you going? The movers need to know where to put everything. I stopped in the doorway, not looking back. Where exactly are they supposed to put 15 years of our lives, Daniel? He laughed nervously. It's just stuff, honey. We can buy new stuff. But it wasn't just stuff. It was Tommy's height marks on the kitchen doorframe. Emma's first art project that we'd framed in the hallway. The custom kitchen island where we'd had family breakfast every morning. All gone. Sold without a second thought. I walked to my car, my mind already racing through the steps I'd need to take. The plans I'd been carefully laying for the past 2 years were about to accelerate dramatically. Sarah, Daniel called after me. Where are you going? To get some things for the kids, I said calmly. For their stay at the hotel. He relaxed visibly. Great idea. Get whatever they need. Money's no object now. No, I thought as I drove away, it never was the object. At least not for him. My first stop wasn't the store. It was my office. Not the little home office where I ran my hobby, interior design business, as Daniel called it. But my real office, in the gleaming downtown building where I'd been quietly building something much bigger than Daniel could imagine. Mrs. Walker, my assistant Jessica, greeted me with concerned eyes. I just got the alert about the house sale. Should I activate Protocol Alpha? I nodded, sinking into my ergonomic chair. How long until everything's ready? She consulted her tablet. The paperwork is prepared. Your lawyer is standing by. And, she smiled slightly, Mrs. Chun is waiting for your call. Mrs. Chun, Daniel's biggest client, or so he thought. The wealthy property developer who'd been feeding his construction company massive contracts for the past 2 years. The same Mrs. Chun who was actually my silent partner in what was about to become Daniel's worst nightmare. Get her on the line, I said, pulling up the folder I'd been updating for 24 months. It's time to show my husband exactly what his hobby wife has been up to. Jessica's fingers flew over her keyboard. Should I also alert Mr. Patterson? I thought about the private investigator who'd been documenting Daniel's business dealings. Every shady contract, every under-the-table deal, every creative accounting decision. Yes, I decided. Tell him to prepare the full report. And Jessica? Make sure the conference room is ready for tomorrow morning. We're going to have some visitors. The banking team? And the SEC investigators. I smiled, thinking of the evidence carefully compiled in my secure server. I think they'll be very interested in how Daniel's been handling his construction company's finances. As Jessica left to make the arrangements, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small photo. The only one I'd managed to grab from the house before Daniel's movers took everything. It showed our family in front of our dream house the day we'd moved in. You should have asked me before selling our home, I murmured to Daniel's smiling image. But then again, you should have asked me about a lot of things. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Hey honey, the movers need to know what to do with your design samples and client files from your office. I texted back, don't worry about those. They're not in the house. What do you mean? Where are they? In my real office, I replied, then turned off my phone. Looking around my spacious corner office, the one Daniel had no idea existed, I thought about how long I'd been preparing for this moment. 2 years of building my own empire while he dismissed my work as a hobby. 2 years of documenting every questionable decision he made. 2 years of waiting for him to go too far. Well, he'd finally done it. He'd sold our home, our children's home, without even consulting me. Now it was time to show him exactly what happened when you underestimated the wrong woman. Daniel's smirk disappeared the moment he walked into my conference room the next morning. Sarah, he stopped short, taking in the wall of windows, the expensive furniture, the view of downtown. What is this place? My office. I gestured to the chair across from me. Please sit. We have a lot to discuss. He remained standing, looking increasingly uneasy as he noticed the other people in the room. My lawyer, 2 SEC investigators, and a distinguished-looking woman he knew very well. Mrs. Chun, his voice cracked slightly. What are you doing here? Helen Chun smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile she'd given him during their business meetings. Supporting my partner, of course. Partner? He looked between us, confusion evident on his face. What partner? Me, I said quietly. Helen and I have been business partners for the past 2 years. Ever since I started Walker Design Group. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Walker Design Group? Your little home decoration business? No, Daniel. That was just the cover. I pressed a button, and the large screen behind me lit up with my company's portfolio. Walker Design Group is actually one of the largest commercial interior design and property development firms in the region. With over 50 employees, 20 major projects completed in the last year, and I paused for effect. A very interesting relationship with your construction company. The color drained from his face as he finally sank into a chair. I don't understand. Let me help you understand. I nodded to Jessica, who started distributing folders to everyone in the room. For the past 2 years, your biggest client has been Chin Development Corporation. They've given you contracts worth millions, helped you expand your business, made you feel successful. Because I am successful, he protested. I earned those contracts. Did you? Helen raised an elegant eyebrow. Or did you get them because my company is partly owned by Walker Design Group? Because your wife's firm has been orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. Daniel's hands shook as he opened the folder in front of him. This is impossible. You're just an interior designer. A hobbyist. A CEO, I corrected him. One who's been watching you make increasingly risky business decisions. Like selling our house without consulting me, then putting the money in your business account instead of our joint account. That was a good business decision. $3 million, Sarah. $3 million that you needed desperately, I said calmly. Because your company is actually on the verge of bankruptcy. Isn't it? He went very still. Who told you that? Your books told me that. I gestured to the SEC investigators. Would you like to explain to these gentlemen why you've been moving money between accounts? Or how you've been using new contract payments to cover old debts? Or perhaps, I pulled out another document, why you sold our house to a shell company that's actually owned by one of your subcontractors. You've been investigating me? His voice rose with indignation. Your own husband? No, Daniel. I've been protecting myself. Ever since you lost our savings in that crypto scheme, I knew I needed a backup plan. So I built one. Several, actually. Jessica handed me another folder. This one thicker than the others. This contains every questionable transaction you've made in the past 5 years. Every time you've borrowed from our personal accounts for your business. Every contract where you've skimmed money or cut corners. You can't prove any of that, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, we can. Helen spoke up. Every contract my company gave you came with very specific documentation requirements. Requirements that Mrs. Walker here helped design. Daniel's face went from white to red. This is entrapment. No, my lawyer finally spoke. This is evidence gathering. And it's all admissible in court. You're bluffing. Daniel tried one last time. You wouldn't send me to jail. What about the kids? The kids? I felt my careful control slip slightly. You mean the children whose home you just sold without warning? Whose stability you've repeatedly risked with your schemes? Those kids. He had the grace to look ashamed. I was trying to save my business. I know. You're always trying to save your business, make the next big deal, chase the next opportunity. Well, guess what? While you were doing that, I built something real. Something sustainable. I stood up, walking to the windows that overlooked the city. Walker Design Group is worth $50 million, Daniel. We have contracts with major developers across 3 states. That little hobby you love to dismiss? It's now one of the most successful firms in the industry. 50 million, he whispered. And growing. Helen smiled. Your wife has quite a talent for business. Better than yours, I'd say. So what do you want? He slumped in his chair, defeated. Money? Revenge? I want my house back. I turned to face him. The good news is, since you sold it to a shell company controlled by your subcontractor, and since that subcontractor has been implicated in your financial irregularities, the sale can be voided. And if I refuse? Then these gentlemen from the SEC will be very interested in examining every aspect of your business dealings. I sat back down, including some transactions that could result in criminal charges. The room fell silent as Daniel processed his options. Finally, he looked up at me with something like respect in his eyes. You've been planning this for 2 years? Longer, I admitted. But I needed proof. Documentation. That's what the last 2 years have been about, creating a record of your business practices while building my own company as a safety net. For the kids. For all of us. I softened slightly. Daniel, you're not a bad person. You're just reckless. With money, with our stability, with our trust. I couldn't let you risk everything we've built anymore. He nodded slowly. What are my options? My lawyer pulled out another document. Option 1, you cooperate fully. Return the house to joint ownership. Transfer the sale money to a trust for the children, and step down as CEO of your company. In return, Mrs. Walker's firm will help restructure your business under new management, and the SEC investigation remains preliminary. And option 2? We go public with everything. I met his eyes steadily. The financial irregularities, the questionable contracts, the house sales scheme. Your choice. He stared at the document for a long moment. The business, my employees, will be protected, Helen assured him. Walker Design Group will absorb your legitimate contracts. Your workers will keep their jobs. But you need to step aside. And the house will be returned to us, both of us, I said. But with a new stipulation. It goes into a trust for the children. Neither of us can sell it without the other's consent, and both our signatures will be required for any major decisions. He picked up the pen my lawyer had placed in front of him. You really built all this? While you were underestimating me. Yes. I smiled slightly. Turns out interior design isn't just about choosing curtains. After he signed, after the SEC investigators left with their evidence, after Helen departed with a proud smile in my direction, Daniel lingered. The kids, he said quietly. Do they know about any of this? They know Mom has a successful business. I gathered my papers. They don't need to know the rest, as long as you keep your end of the agreement. And us? Our marriage? I paused, thinking about the past 15 years. About the good times and bad, the trust built and broken. That depends, I said finally, on whether you can accept that your wife isn't just a hobbyist anymore. That I'm your equal, or maybe even your better, in business. I think you've proved that pretty definitively. He managed a small smile. $50 million? And growing. I checked my phone. The movers will return our furniture tomorrow. The kids never have to know it was gone. Sarah? He stopped at the door. I'm sorry. Not just about the house, but about everything. About not seeing who you really are. I know. I watched him leave, thinking about second chances and lessons learned. That night, back in our house, our children's house, I sat in my home office looking at the family photo again. But this time, I saw something different in it. Not just a family in front of their dream house, but a woman at the beginning of her own dream. A dream that had grown into something bigger than Daniel could have imagined. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen. Board meeting tomorrow. Time to discuss that expansion into commercial real estate. I smiled, thinking about the projects I'd been planning, the empire I'd continue building. Not in secret anymore, but in plain sight. Definitely, I texted back. After all, every dream house needs a dream business to support it. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned. My boss humiliated me in front of 200 people. Then I showed them my real resume. This is what mediocrity looks like. Richard Thornton's voice boomed across the grand ballroom of the Marriott, amplified by the wireless microphone clipped to his $3,000 suit. 200 employees from Meridian Financial Solutions turned in their chairs to stare at me. Sitting alone at table 14 in the back corner, wearing my off-the-rack blazer and the expression of someone who wished the floor would open up and swallow them whole. 8 months, Richard continued, warming to his theme as he gestured dramatically in my direction. 8 months of subpar performance, missed deadlines, and general incompetence. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Jennifer Walsh, our newest case study in why we maintain such rigorous hiring standards. The laughter that rippled through the room was the kind that comes from relief. Relief that someone else was being singled out for humiliation. Relief that the boss's attention was focused elsewhere. Relief that they weren't the ones sitting under the spotlight of public shame. Jennifer here, Richard said, his voice dripping with condescension, represents everything this company doesn't stand for. While the rest of you have been exceeding targets and driving innovation, she's been, well, what have you been doing, Jennifer? Besides taking up space and collecting a paycheck. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, my face carefully composed into an expression of embarrassed submission. Inside, I was cataloging every word, every gesture, every face in the crowd that was laughing at what they believed was my professional destruction. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Jennifer Walsh didn't actually exist. My real name is Special Agent Sarah Martinez, and I'd been working undercover at Meridian Financial Solutions for 8 months as part of a federal investigation into securities fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The mediocre performance Richard was mocking had been carefully calibrated to keep me invisible while I gathered evidence that would ultimately destroy his company and send him to federal prison. Let this serve as a reminder, Richard announced, turning back to address the full audience, that excellence is not optional at Meridian. We demand the best from ourselves and our colleagues. There's no room for dead weight in a high-performance organization. The applause was enthusiastic. Richard basked in it, his silver hair gleaming under the ballroom lights, his Rolex catching the reflection as he gestured grandly. He was a man who had built an empire on charm, charisma, and the kind of financial crimes that were sophisticated enough to evade detection for over a decade. Until now. Jennifer will be leaving us after this retreat, Richard continued. We wish her well in finding a position more suited to her limited capabilities. More laughter. More applause. More faces turning to look at the woman who had become the evening's entertainment, the cautionary tale, the object lesson in professional failure. I maintained my role perfectly, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast, the picture of a defeated employee who had just been publicly destroyed by her superior. But I was also mentally reviewing the evidence I'd collected over the past 8 months. Evidence that would transform this moment of humiliation into the most satisfying case closure of my career. The investigation had begun when a whistleblower, a former Meridian employee named Marcus Chin, had contacted the FBI with allegations that the company was systematically defrauding clients and manipulating financial markets. Marcus had worked in their accounting department and had discovered discrepancies that suggested large-scale criminal activity. The problem was that Marcus had been fired before he could gather sufficient evidence, and Meridian's security measures made external investigation nearly impossible. They needed someone on the inside, someone who could document the crimes from within the organization. That's where I came in. I'd been a federal agent for 12 years, specializing in financial crimes and corporate corruption. I'd worked undercover before, but never for such an extended period or in such a visible role. The challenge was to blend in completely while systematically documenting criminal activity that could lead to federal charges. Creating Jennifer Walsh had been a 6-month process involving fabricated employment history, fake references, and a carefully constructed persona of someone competent enough to get hired, but unremarkable enough to avoid scrutiny. The FBI's team had crafted every detail, from my supposed college transcripts to my apartment lease to my social media presence. The mediocre performance Richard was ridiculing had been the most challenging part of my cover. Everything in my training and experience screamed against deliberately doing poor work. But I needed to maintain my invisibility while gaining access to the financial systems where the real crimes were taking place. Over 8 months, I documented systematic client fraud, discovered offshore accounts used for money laundering, photographed falsified documents, and recorded conversations that would serve as evidence in dozens of federal prosecutions. I'd also identified the key players in the criminal organization and mapped their relationships to other financial institutions. Richard Thornton wasn't just the CEO of a corrupt company. He was the center of a web of financial crimes that extended across multiple states and involved millions of dollars in stolen assets. Excellence, people, Richard concluded his speech, raising his champagne glass in a toast. To excellence, and to the courage to eliminate those who fall short of our standards. The room erupted in applause. 200 employees raised their glasses, toasting the elimination of mediocrity, celebrating their superiority over the pathetic woman in the back corner who had just been publicly humiliated and fired. I raised my glass of water and toasted along with them, knowing that this would be the last celebration many of them would ever attend as free citizens. The retreat ended the next morning with a buffet breakfast and motivational speeches about the company's bright future. Richard worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, slapping backs, and making promises about bonuses and promotions for his top performers. I ate my continental breakfast in silence, still playing the role of the defeated ex-employee who was too embarrassed to leave before the official end of the event. Several colleagues approached me with awkward condolences, the kind of performative sympathy that costs nothing and accomplishes less. "Don't take it personally," whispered Janet from HR. "Richard can be brutal, but sometimes that's what it takes to maintain standards." "You'll land on your feet," offered Mike from sales. "Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Sometimes getting fired is the kick in the pants we need to find our true calling." I thanked them for their concern and assured them that I'd be fine. In fact, I'd never been better. At 9:47 a.m., just as the motivational speaker was explaining the importance of synergistic leadership paradigms, my phone buzzed with a text message that consisted of a single word: "Go." I excused myself to use the restroom and never returned to the ballroom. By 10:15 a.m., I was in the parking lot, shedding my Jennifer Walsh persona like a snake molting its skin. Off came the mousy brown wig, revealing my natural black hair. Off came the thick-rimmed glasses that I'd never needed. Off came the ill-fitting blazer that had hidden my actual physique. I pulled my real clothes from my car trunk: dark suit, comfortable shoes, and the gold badge that identified me as Special Agent Sarah Martinez, Federal Bureau of Investigation. At 10:30 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled into the Marriott parking lot, followed by a van from the FBI's evidence response team and 2 unmarked cars from the U.S. Attorney's Office. I met with the lead agent, my supervisor Frank Rodriguez, and the federal prosecutor who would be handling the case. "How did it go?" Frank asked. "Better than expected," I said, handing him a flash drive containing 8 months of evidence. Thornton practically confessed to multiple felonies during his speech last night. The whole thing was recorded. "Outstanding. Are you ready to make some arrests?" I looked toward the hotel entrance, where Richard Thornton was probably still holding court, basking in the adoration of employees who had no idea their world was about to collapse. "I've been ready for 8 months. At 10:45 a.m., 26 federal agents walked into the grand ballroom of the Marriott. The motivational speaker stopped mid-sentence about leveraging core competencies and stared at the army of law enforcement officers who had just interrupted his presentation. Richard Thornton was standing near the coffee station, laughing at something one of his vice presidents had said when Agent Rodriguez approached him. "Richard Thornton?" "Yes, FBI. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit securities fraud, money laundering, and racketeering." The silence that followed was absolute. 200 employees, the same people who had applauded my humiliation 12 hours earlier, watched in stunned shock as their CEO was handcuffed and read his Miranda rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." I stood near the ballroom entrance, watching Richard's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally recognition as he spotted me among the federal agents. "That's impossible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She's nobody. She's mediocre. She's Special Agent Sarah Martinez, I said, approaching him with my badge clearly visible. And you're right about one thing, Mr. Thornton. I am what mediocrity looks like. If you define mediocrity as spending 8 months documenting your crimes while pretending to be the worst employee you'd ever hired. The color drained from his face as the implications hit him. The woman he'd humiliated, the employee he'd mocked, the dead weight he'd planned to eliminate, she had been a federal agent the entire time. Everything you said, I continued. Every crime you committed, every illegal decision you made while I was in that room, it's all been recorded and documented, including last night's speech about eliminating people who fall short of your standards. Other agents were moving through the ballroom, making additional arrests. The vice president who had been laughing with Richard was now in handcuffs. The CFO who had signed the falsified documents was being read his rights. The head of trading who had manipulated market prices was being escorted toward the exit. The investigation is ongoing, Agent Rodriguez announced to the room. Anyone who has information about illegal activities at Meridian Financial Solutions should speak with one of our agents. Cooperation will be noted and appreciated. The employees who had laughed at my supposed mediocrity 12 hours earlier were now looking at me with expressions of terror, wondering what I might have observed about their own activities, what evidence I might have gathered about their involvement in the company's crimes. Janet from HR, who had offered condescending sympathy at breakfast, was now pale and shaking. Mike from sales, who had suggested that getting fired might be a blessing in disguise, was frantically checking his phone as if he could somehow delete months of incriminating communications. Agent Martinez, Richard said as the other agents prepared to escort him out of the ballroom. This is entrapment. You can't pretend to be someone you're not, and then use that too. Mr. Thornton, I interrupted. I never pretended to be anyone other than an employee of your company. You assumed I was mediocre because that's what you wanted to see. You dismissed me because arrogance made you blind to the possibility that someone might be watching your criminal enterprise. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You taught me something important about excellence and mediocrity. Truly excellent people don't need to humiliate others to prove their worth. They don't build their success on the foundation of other people's failures. And they certainly don't commit federal crimes while giving speeches about maintaining high standards. The agents led him away, and I watched him disappear through the ballroom doors, his $3,000 suit and Rolex no match for the federal handcuffs that would define the rest of his life. The investigation that followed made national news. Meridian Financial Solutions, how an undercover FBI agent brought down a $500 million fraud scheme. Richard Thornton was ultimately sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. 14 other executives received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The company was dissolved, its assets seized to compensate the thousands of clients who had been defrauded. The whistleblower, Marcus Chun, received a substantial reward from the federal government for his role in initiating the investigation. 6 months later, I was awarded the FBI Director's Award for Excellence in Undercover Operations. During the ceremony, my supervisor Frank Rodriguez made a speech about the dedication required for long-term undercover work. Agent Martinez spent 8 months being deliberately mediocre, he said. She endured professional humiliation, personal attacks, and the constant stress of maintaining a false identity, all while gathering evidence that would ultimately protect thousands of innocent victims from financial fraud. The applause was genuine this time, coming from colleagues who understood the sacrifice and skill required for successful undercover work. After the ceremony, a young agent approached me with a question. Agent Martinez, how did you handle being treated so badly for so long? Didn't you ever want to break character and show them who you really were? I thought about Richard Thornton's speech, about the laughter of 200 employees who thought they were witnessing someone else's humiliation, about the moment when handcuffs replaced applause and reality replaced arrogance. The best part about being underestimated, I told her, is that people reveal their true character when they think you're powerless to do anything about it. Richard Thornton showed me exactly who he was when he thought I was nobody important. That made everything that followed much easier to justify. Today, I work in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, where I use the experience from the Meridian case to train other agents in undercover operations. I still go undercover occasionally, but never for as long or as intensively as the Jennifer Walsh assignment. Sometimes people ask me if I regret spending 8 months being deliberately mediocre, if I found it frustrating to hide my real capabilities for so long. The answer is simple. There's nothing mediocre about gathering evidence that protects innocent people from criminals who think they're too smart to get caught. There's nothing frustrating about watching justice prevail over arrogance and greed. And there's definitely nothing regrettable about proving that sometimes the most powerful response to humiliation is simply letting the truth speak for itself. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or humiliated by someone who thought they were better than you, remember that character reveals itself over time. The people who treat others badly when they think they can get away with it are usually the ones with the most to hide. Share this story if you believe that justice has a way of finding people who think they're above the law. And subscribe for more stories about truth, justice, and the satisfaction that comes from watching arrogance meet its match. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.